both in chambers and by means of electronic participation as permitted by Section 238, subsection 3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, and the Town of Mono Procedural Bylaw 2020-42. Residents can either watch this meeting as it occurs or later on through our website. I see we have a quorum today. Just a reminder that emergency exits are in the rear of the council chambers. Members are free to declare pecuniary interest at this point in the meeting or at any point followed up in writing with the clerk. And I'll begin with the Indigenous land acknowledgement. We would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the town of Mono resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Teotante, Attawattaron, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe peoples. We also acknowledge that the town of Mono resides within the treaty lands named under Treaty 18, the Nottawasaga Purchase of 1818. These traditional territories upon which we live and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions. It is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways and resources. I have a motion that Council approves agenda of session 8-2025 as circulated. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor Nix moves, seconded by Councillor Capes. Any objection? And that motion is carried. I have a further motion that Council approves the minutes of session 7-2025. Do I have a mover? Councillor Manktelow moves. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Davies seconds. Any objection to those, that motion? And that motion is carried. We have a few few proclamations to make at this meeting. National Volunteer Week. Whereas National Volunteer Week from April 27th to May 3rd, 2025 celebrates the generosity and dedication of volunteers who contribute their time, skills, and energy to support and strengthen our community. And whereas the theme for 2025 is Volunteers Make Waves, which highlights the power, impact, and importance of individual and collective volunteer efforts across Canada. And whereas volunteers in Mono share their time, skills, empathy, and creativity with each and every contribution they make at a moment when we need support more than ever before. And whereas volunteers are vital to making a collective impact on the strength, inclusivity, and quality of life and well-being of our community. And whereas organizations in Mono that rely on volunteers are the fundamental backbone of what helps to make our community thrive. On behalf of Council, I proclaim April 27th to May 3rd, 2025 as National Volunteer Week in the town of Mono and urge our fellow citizens to recognize the crucial role played by volunteers in the community. This is also MS Awareness Month. Whereas multiple sclerosis is a chronic, often disabling neurological disease affecting an estimated 1 in 400 Canadians and approximately 90,000 persons across the country, and whereas multiple sclerosis symptoms are vary widely and may lead to problems with numbness, coordination, vision, and speech, as well as extreme fatigue and even paralysis. And whereas there is no known cause, prevention of, or cure for multiple sclerosis, and whereas the Multiple Sclerosis Society of Canada is the only national organization in Canada that supports both MS research and services for people with MS and their families, annual fundraising events such as the MS Walk, MS Bike, and A&W Canada's Burgers to Beat MS campaigns support programs to enhance the lives of people affected by multiple sclerosis and their families, and supports MS research in Canada. And whereas since 1948, the Multiple Sclerosis Society of Canada has contributed $200 million towards MS research and is grateful for the dedication and commitment of its supporters and volunteers that have made this possible, on behalf of Council, I do proclaim May 2025 as MS Awareness Month in the town of Mono. And I should just add parenthetically, we have I believe, a higher rate of MS in the Canadian population than they have in many other places in the world. And no one knows why. This is also Sexual Violence Prevention Month, whereas sexual assaults affect people of every age, race, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, national origin, and socioeconomic background, and whereas everyone has a role in preventing and responding to sexual violence, and whereas there are many myths and misconceptions about sexual violence that exist in our community, and whereas everyone can help create a safe and respectful community by challenging attitudes and behaviors that promote sexual violence and victim blaming. And whereas Sexual Violence Awareness Month is a month dedicated to raising awareness of the impact of sexual violence is having on our community, and to highlight the need for support and services to those affected by sexual assault. On behalf of Council, I hereby proclaim May 2025 as Sexual Violence Awareness Month in the town of Mono, and encourage citizens to reflect on the harm that results from sexual assault and sexual violence, and to make time to consider how we can educate ourselves and our community to be safer and supportive of all members. And that brings us to question period.
Your Worship, we don't have any questions submitted online in advance for today.
Oh. Any questions from the gallery? Yes, come on forward, sir. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
And just hit the sound button on the mic and give us your name and where you live.
Thank you, council and staff. My name's Emerson. I'm a landowner and farmer, owner, operator in Mono Township. And I'm here to ask a question about the firearms discharge bylaw that I received the survey in the mail. And I just want to introduce myself and respect your time and respect the process and stuff. And
Okay.
hope to have a continuing conversation about this. But I grew up in Mulmer Township, and that's where my parents live. Grew up on the family farm. Not that that really matters, but I've been involved with Mulmer Township with the recreation, and I'm the chair of the Mansfield Community Parks Board, so I'm familiar with surveys and kind of how townships work. And I find municipalities can make practical, relevant decisions based on perception, but general subjectivity can be unreasonable with reality. Let's be objective. Let's base things on data, on real things rather than emotions. Legal fire owners and hunters take safety and well-being very seriously. Obtaining and maintaining the firearm license and hunting safety course take dedication and conscious consideration. Safety, security, and well-being are covered in these courses, as well as current laws protecting these principles. So my question is kind of twofold. I have many questions that I'd like to submit later.
Okay.
But I'd just like to know what the motivation to initiate this bylaw. I feel like the survey is kind of putting the cart before the horse. I don't know if stakeholders and people with practical experience have been involved, and why this survey is asking individuals who lack practical experience and respect for legal ownership and use of firearms and bows. Yeah.
So is your first name Emerson or last
Yes,
name?
first name's Emerson.
And your last name, sir?
Pendleton.
Okay, thank you.
386-066, 20 Sideroad.
Terrific. I think the motivation for this came from a number of residents who had concerns about discharge of firearms on small lots, what we in the old days would have called strip lots, in close proximity to their homes and the places where their children play and that kind of thing. as distinct from discharge of firearms on, say, a 100-acre lot, as an example. And we've had, over the years, a number of individuals come forward and say that there should be different rules depending on the geography of properties. Now, we can agree or disagree with that, but it did prompt us to launch a consultative process. It's the highest level of consultation that the council can initiate. And without second guessing what my colleagues will say, my hunch is that we will be very mindful of the survey results and the fact that there will be people filling in the survey probably who have never discharged a firearm. Right. And then there'll be lots of people who do so frequently and with training. Does anyone else have, Fred?
I'm no expert on this subject. In fact, it's been some time since I looked at the draft bylaw, so this is just off the cuff. I did have a couple of phone calls, and one of them was quite interesting. I have no idea if it applies to you, but the draft bylaw as it stands says you have to have a property of X number of hectares. I think it's 2 acres or something. The person who phoned has a smaller lot than that, and he has grandchildren who do target practice out back, so he was quite worried. I understand he was quite worried. We had a good discussion, and I said, well, do you have neighbors? He said, yes. Have you talked to them about your grandchildren doing target practice? Yes. Do they have any problems with it? No. Well, then there's no issue, because our bylaws are complaint-driven. So if his neighbor is happy with his grandchildren out there firing a .22 at some target and isn't going to complain, we will have no knowledge of it, and there'd be no infraction. That's my understanding, Your Worship. So I think there might be other people in that situation. As long as your neighbors are happy with it, there's no issue.
Ralph and then Melinda.
Thanks for coming here. I also have a farm and 100 acres, and I have a firearm which I've used and realized the need for it, particularly on farms, from everything from rabid foxes to other animals.
You have to speak into the mic. We're not hearing you.
We can't hear you, Mel.
Oh, is that better now?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I say I have a farm, a 100-acre farm, and I've had to use my rifle for to manage various animals such as a rabid fox at one time, and et cetera. And I appreciate the need for it by most farmers. When I canvassed last year in one section of Mono, the dominant complaint was about firearms which were being shot off the back veranda of somebody's home, and the difficulty they had in dealing with this for various reasons. So it was a concern of at least 3 or 4 people in that area. So that is one aspect. And then at the other end of Mono, the northwest end, I've also had complaints from somebody about the use of the property as a shooting range. So we also look at our bylaws periodically and update them to make sure that they appear relevant, and that's one of the motivations here. Could you hear me, Fred?
Yeah. Melinda?
Thank you very much for your question, and thank you for coming. Then that's kind of the reason why we have a tiered approach to when we're going to change a bylaw. That, and I gather you heard about it when you opened up your mail, as I did the other day, and there's the big paper survey. So the paper, us sending out surveys and paper things, I think that clearly that's an important thing for us to continue to do, because we've had this on the agenda for quite a while, and we've had a lot of feedback. And I think that the idea that our bylaws are only, they only come into act when a neighbor complains is all very well until you get a new neighbor, or until you have, a rallying of the neighbors and the gossip at the whatever, right? So I'm hopeful that we're going to really look at this very, very carefully. And I think carving out, as opposed to just saying the official plan, what the uses of the properties are, but actually the sizes and so on, and small may not be, it may not be the same on one guy's small lot versus the other, because it depends on where their houses are and which way their target is placed and so on, right? So thank you very much for coming. This is, we're just starting this process, so please fill out the survey and send in your other questions.
And the one thing which I think it needs to be made clear is this is not an attempt to regulate or ban hunting.
Right.
Some people have misunderstood it to be an effort to control hunting within the town of Mono. And while that may be something that people would like to see, municipalities have no control over hunting, but they do have control over discharge of firearms. And I'll give you one example. We have currently a bylaw that regulates discharge of firearms at nighttime. The sole exception being to protect livestock. And that was introduced due to complaints that we had from individuals who were living near somebody who was doing it on allegedly on a regular basis.
Right.
So, you know, and parenthetically, I'd also say that the amount of discharge of firearms has gone way, way down from the 1960s and 70s when it was, you know, it sounded like World War III with people shooting skeet and hunting and so forth. It's actually declined quite dramatically.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you.
Elaine?
Thank you, Emerson, for coming. And because you're here, and people will hear this when they watch the recording, it's brilliant, because I would like to direct anybody who has comments, concerns, questions to fill out that survey, because that's the whole engagement process. And so you coming here today allows us to talk about it, allows us to redirect people to that survey, so that even if you have called, even if you have talked to somebody, put it in the survey, because that's where we're going to collect all of the feedback, and we're going to have a rich dialogue about this discharge of firearms bylaw. So thank you for that. So I encourage everybody, and you encourage everybody too.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking your time.
No
I hope
problem.
to be involved with it further.
No problem. Our pleasure. Thank you. Our first delegation and only delegation is CIBC, Wood Gundy, and it's Will Makay. If you could come forward.
Thank you.
Will, good to see you.
Morning, Your Worship. How are you?
Good.
Council, thank you. Always happy to come. Certainly happy to come when we get to present good news. It's always been good news. It's always been a pleasure to work with my friend and colleague Les throughout the very, very many years to do this. So do we have the presentation on screen? Perfect. Before I get into it, any pressing questions that we have before I walk through the presentation today? Perfect, no. Councillor, I made it much shorter for you this year, so with a lot more information up front. So we'll go through a few things. So we're going to be speaking specifically about the December 24th year-end financials for the investments for the corporation of the town of Mono. So what we'll talk about just in the first page here, if we move to the second page, is just what was 2024's rate journey. I called that rate expectations. And what it was we started 2024 at significantly high interest rates, and we have seen successive interest rates cuts from 5% heading down towards 3.75 in December. We saw another cut in March of 2024. We're expecting an additional 2 this year. That is the forecast with the economic situation we're in right now. And what we'll talk about here is what we look for in terms of this taking the opportunity to rotate some of our positions throughout the year. We hadn't actually had some real liquidity in the portfolio in the last few years as we had been sending successive payments back to the town. We were able to rotate some funds this year and been able to lock in some good rates as they were a lot higher. And that's been able to extend our yield to maturity in the portfolio and also the duration, so stretching out a little bit. But we've focused on three main purposes and principles for the portfolio since inception. Number one is capital protection. That is number one. We say I want a return of my money before I get a return on my money. That's it. We're stewards of the community's money. That's number one. Number two is liquidity or access to funds if we need it. That's been very important for the last few years as we've had to send funds back. We haven't actually had to liquidate any positions to be able to do that. It's been through natural liquidity in the portfolio that we've been able to do it. This year in 2025 is the first time where that natural liquidity has actually allowed us to roll over some funds at higher interest rates, and we can talk about that after. And the last one is rate of return. I always say, you know what, it's very simple. We always know there's only two ways we get money inside, the portfolio. We raise fees or we get a better rate of return. That's really it. So if we can squeeze as much as possible out of that. This year, we focus on two things. One is credit risk, of course, quality of investments, adhering to the Municipal Act, making sure we're there, but stretching as much as possible what we can to get a better rate of return. And number two is interest rate risk. We aim to mitigate any interest rate risk. Typically, you have gone out longer in duration to get more. We've been in an inverted or very flat yield curve for many, many years. Duration has not been a friend, and during interest rate increases that we saw in 2022 and 2023, the portfolio weathered that very, very well because we had a very low duration, which means we had very little impact from changing interest rates, and that was by design. So this laddered structure with low duration has allowed us to keep volatility in the portfolio very low. Liquidity, if you look below that, we're able to maintain a very strong liquid position where we have maturities rolling over the next 4 to 5 years, with the majority of them coming between the next 1 and 2 years. That, again, is by design. The reason is we've had some previous liquidity wasn't able to get rolled over. Therefore, we weren't able to purchase longer dated maturities, which is why you see a little bit more in between the 1 and 2 years. But again, this year, 2025, we been able to stretch some of that out and roll it back over. We just recently made a purchase there of a corporate bond that was able to get us 4% net, which is there in a current rate of return where 1 year GIC offers 2.85. So very, very happy with that one. And we do have some liquidity coming in the portfolio right now from pre-existing positions. Yield is what we'll talk about here. Considering both capital, safety, and liquidity, we outperformed our benchmark by 2.88% in 2024. This was significant outperformance, and we were able to do that because some of the historical positions that we had purchased in the portfolio, such as a principal protected note in 2020, it comes due April 28th of this year and had a significant amount of performance during 2024. So that has allowed us to do that. So we'll continue to monitor the holdings that we have in the portfolio. If I move to the next page, we'll just highlight some performance. And this is really where we want to talk about it. That's 1 year rate of return of 7.4%. This is due to historical purchases that were already in the account, not a significant pickup in risk or yield in the portfolio. So we had 2024 when we had, say, some of our positions, interest rates drop. Some of the positions that we had previously purchased recovered some of their value that we had previously had, and that was the impetus for that performance. Therefore, all funds that we had sent to the town in 2024 were actually made from return. Therefore, we were able to maintain the portfolio value. We don't expect that to be consistent going forward. The reason is we sent back over $800,000 to the town last year, and that required a 7% rate of return. We're likely to see 3%. So our net yield, as interest rates have come down, we'll be able to produce approximately $375,000 to $400,000 worth of return without eating into capital. Any more than that will start eating into capital funds that's there. And we've been able to maintain a net 3% rate of return over the life of the fund. That doesn't sound extremely exciting at the moment, but we have to remember that during 2020, we endured some of the lowest interest rates that we've had historically across that period of time. And for the last 10 years, I would say we have been successfully in a consistently low interest rate environment, with the small anomaly that we had with interest rates that popped up in 2022, 2023, combating inflation. We've seen them come down quite aggressively again this year, and that will be consistent. Below, in the chart below, I'd like to highlight in 2024, you'll see that we achieved a 7.482% rate of return relative to our short-term bond benchmark below that, which we benchmark against at just over 5%. And you can see in the last successive 2023 and 2022, we outperformed our benchmark in both instances across the board. That has allowed us to maintain that long-term rate of return. One of the things that I would highlight, most municipalities are available to invest in the One Investment Program, which is consistent across that. Their Canadian corporate bond portfolio return was 4.6 for 2024 relative to our 7.482% rate of return. We outperformed their benchmark by 2.882%. And this has been consistent over the life of our investments that we've had. We've strategically been able to outperform that benchmark. And the reason is with a smaller portfolio like yours, you don't have to commingle into a large fund. We can cherry pick better rates of return for yourselves individually at a lower cost. That we've been able to do that. And so I'll just stop there. That's me very, very concurrently for the last 5 minutes. Any questions at this moment?
Questions? Brett?
I've got one. It's more for Les than for you. So we have reserve funds. We have a capital management program. We have reserves for various capital assets. We put that money aside and we give it to Will, and he invests it and makes 7.48%. That interest then, you accrue that to the various reserve funds, right? All right. Why does the Headwater Streams Committee get no interest on its account? Because we've had a couple of $1,000s in there for a few years, and you never get, it doesn't grow. There's no interest on it. Why not? Sorry, this is really.
Because it was just set up as like a reserve or a deferred revenue. It's not a reserve fund like some of these other like development
money.
charges. Like
You're
a fund,
holding it
they
for us.
earn interest. They have their own bank account and their own investment accounts. So it may earn interest, but it accrues
It doesn't
to the
earn
town.
any interest.
No.
I'm
I
gonna
mean, it
talk-
does, but not to the fund itself. It's just general overall.
Now I got a question for CIBC, and this one you can't answer, but I'll ask it anyway. If you were Mr. Powell or Mr. is it Macklin, and what would you do over the next 6 months in terms of the bank rate? I ask it because of this. Trump's tariffs are going to increase prices, so we're probably going to have inflation. If you're the central banker, you're probably going to want to raise interest rates to dampen down inflation, right? You already said that in your discussion. But all the economists now are predicting we're going to go into a recession. And if you're the central banker, you probably want to lower interest rates to fight off the recession. So if you were the central banker, what would you do over the next 6 months? That's why I said you wouldn't be able to answer the question. But I'm curious as to what you might speculate on it, because I've got some investment decisions to make too. Where are interest rates going to go in the next 6 months?
So to answer your question here, what you're talking about is called stagflation. Okay? We've been talking about this for 6 months, or at least right now. A tariff is a tax. It's an increase of cost of goods. That is all. And you're exactly right. During a inflationary period, you would see rising interest rates. Let's take, and Your Worship, just a few moments.
Yes, sir.
Apologies.
Go ahead.
2020, we had COVID, loss of confidence in the economy, not quite sure who's working, dropped interest rates, flooded the economy with funds. You either lost your job or got a raise. You could afford inflation at that period of time because your wage went up to accommodate it. So they were able to pass on those costs to consumers. That was easy. You could take that. Then we saw what happened to housing. As we flooded the availability of capital for individuals, it raised their ability to purchase. We saw inflation. Construction price inflation was rampant through there at 5%, even though CPI was calling for 2%. We saw it was across the board. Once inflation takes hold, they raise interest rates to pull down that demand. This situation right here is you don't have an increase in demand, you just have an increase of cost by a tax coming in on top of it. So it's not that demand has increased, it's just the price has increased. Your house was $1 million, it's now 1.25. Not because of more demand, just because of more cost. At the exact same time, if you cannot pass on those costs to consumers, companies will protect their margin and therefore they will cut costs. First thing to be able to cut cost is human capital. People will be losing their jobs. This is a reality. We're seeing it in the United States. We are at significant worry that they're going to create a situation of stagflation. This is exactly it. This is where you have rising inflation and lower economic growth at the same period of time. You have competing interest for monetary policy here, and it really ties your hands. And this is in the U.S., where you can see Donald Trump is extremely upset with the Fed in the States because they won't cut interest rates. But you can't cut interest rates at a time when inflation is being pushed up through tariffs. And so this is an exact example of what you'll see happening. The Bank of Canada only cut interest rates here in Canada because of the economic pressure that the tariffs are going to be putting on. And they made it in their statement that was in there. And so this is one of the things that you see. They took another pause saying, no, we don't have to raise, we don't have to cut rates now, we'll see where it comes. We still expect to see 2 successive interest rate cuts. That's what our bank is calling for this year. You can see it in the yield curve. The U.S., their interest rates are staying much higher because they have a significant inability to cut interest rates. And this, compounded by the situation that the U.S. dollar is the demand currency in the world, right? And this has been part of their issue with their trade, which is why you've seen the U.S. dollar fall over the last couple of years. Part of the argument is the U.S. argues that most countries around the world artificially keep their interest rate low to keep their currency low against the U.S. dollar. And that's been an argument. So again, you see if there is continued inflation through tariff costs, and if Canada participates in reciprocal tariffs and raising cost of goods, like cars and items like that, you will see inflation here in Canada stick around. But it's more worse in the U.S. right now. They are significantly more hand-tied than we are. So we expect to see Canada cut successively 2 more times where it comes in here, but it will be data dependent on most of that where it comes in. So that's our firm's position, that we'll see 2 additional coming, but we really have to understand what stagflation is and how it can really tie your hands in your ability to combat either inflation when it comes in through tariff increases, or your ability to support your economy by cutting interest rates.
Wow, quite an answer. Thanks for that lecture. So two more cuts that you're expecting this year. And we're at 3% now, the central bank rate? And
3.75.
3.75.
Sorry, 3.5 at this moment.
3.5. And the United States central rate is lower than that, is it not?
No, it's much higher. It's much higher. Our prime rate is 4.95 here in Canada. I believe at this moment it's 7 and change in the U.S. right now. Their overnight rate is 4.5% right now.
Okay.
Yeah, their interest rates are significantly high in the U.S. Their 30-year mortgage rates are over 7% right now in the U.S. relative to Canada.
Ralph and then Melinda.
Well, thank you for that educational thought.
Mike?
Thank you for that education. Appreciate it.
Sorry, that was business classes coming back in.
Just one question. My calculations are right. About a quarter of our assets are in promissory notes, principal protected notes, I should say. Can you elaborate a little bit on where that is, what asset classes we're invested in?
Yeah, absolutely. So a principal protected note is a debt obligation. So it's a commercial payment against either BMO or CIBC. The reason that we have a slightly larger weighting into that position is we're not required to liquidate positions because we have drawn down the size of the fund. That's why. So that size of the position has increased in size because we've taken front-end lower dated maturities out of the portfolio. And that's why as the portfolio itself has moved from 14 million to 11 million, the percentage in the size of our principal protected notes has increased on top of the size that the performance in them has increased their value as well. So a principal protected note is a debt obligation to either one of the banks, either CIBC or BMO that we have here, where we will have 100% principal repayment of our investment on the date of maturity. The return will be variable, and it will be calculated based on an underlying understanding or the contract of the bank. So, for example, one of the ones that we have with CIBC, right now it comes due to on the 28th. And we will get paid a 13% rate of return from the 2021 to today, which is a 3.75% rate of return over the life of it, if the underlying performance is above zero. And that was it. So at the time, interest rates were sub 2% at the time. It was a very attractive investment that we made, so that one comes due naturally today. So again, each one is structured individually based on its underlying variable return. However, the principal is guaranteed in each instance.
I think I get that, thank you. But what asset classes is the bank invested in?
That one there, typically what we use is a underlying index in the Canadian banks. And the reason for that is the Canadian banks have a very high correlation to what happens in the Canadian economy. But we get away from the variability of including oil and gas and materials such as gold and such, so we get a little bit of a smoother rate of return. So it's based, the underlying index is the Canadian Banks Index.
I'm not sure what that is.
So it's a combination. It could be either all 5 or 6 of the Canadian banks, and we group them together, and we strike a date, say in 2021. What is the value of them today? We will value them 4 years later, and if the underlying basket is up above 0.00%, we get paid our contractual rate of return. Each one is a little separately different. And if it is 0, we get a base return of just our principal. And what I would like to say, in no iteration that we have issued at this moment have we returned either a negative or a 0 on any single one. We've had positive performance for every single one. And through our conversation with my friend, the Treasurer Les, we have rotated at sometimes out of those positions early to take our performance up front and reset our floor. Because remember, principal is guaranteed. So what we have done is rotated out of some of the positions a little early to be able to reset our floor on some of these to ensure that we retain that performance. The proverbial bird in the hand versus 2 in the bush.
Thank you. Melinda?
Thank you very much. So, yeah, right, because the banks keep being strong. We haven't had the banks, if that's the sector.
That's what we invest in. The banks in Canada are very, very well capitalized. Performance for them, cash flow to pay the dividends is required approximately about 50%. The rest of it there is for capital expenditures, growth, et cetera. So they're cyclical and cycling like everything else. You know what? Less people renewing their mortgages means less performance in that area. But you know what? We rotate out of those.
Yeah, but my fees are still going up even though they're whatever. So it all works out that the banks are doing well.
Agreed.
But my question was back to your stagnation thing. So the answer, from listening to what you say, it seems like the answer to the stagnation is that when tariffs are put on, so a new tax is put on, just like everything that governments seem to want to do, the idea is that it's going to be a temporary situation. It's going to fix what we're in, this problem that we're in right now, but it's not going to be on forever. So is to fix the stagnation thing, or stagflation, is that to fix, the tariffs have to come off, or change, or lower? Is that the end game?
Stagflation is very difficult to combat. It requires a variety of different things. One of it is economic expansion and growth. That's really important, and it's difficult because at one time here you are either taking on debt to fund economic expansion so that you can keep people employed. The reason is people who are afraid of losing their jobs don't typically spend a lot of money. And you go through a self-fulfilling prophecy at that moment. You're worried about losing jobs, therefore you don't spend any money, you don't go away, and then therefore companies lose less revenue and profit, therefore they don't require 10 people, they require 9, they cut, therefore it's true, you become more worried. And that's where that spiral comes in this one. So it's very, very difficult. We can handle a little bit of difficulty, you know what, speaking en masse, everybody who loses their job and their positions, you know what, must take that differently. But it's very difficult at that time because, again, the typical thing for economic expansion, if you don't have people out there spending money, governments would inject capital into the system, either through grants, direct money, capital projects paying for things like this. But then again, that's taking on debt, increasing deficit, and injecting money. That's inflationary. You know, you're pumping money into the system. You want to see economic expansion. So you can see sectors go through areas that you know, cost goes up where relative other ones go down. You know, and we can see that here, you know, in Canada, where you've got, take grocery stores or other things like this with Buy Canada, you know, it's benefiting from this. And we had, what was it, 900 workers in Stellantis, you know, it got shuttered, right? So it becomes a very, very disproportionate activity in the economy sometimes. It's hard to fix.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, and you are the bearer of good news.
This year I am. I'm always happy to show up with good news. Here we are. And as I said, I enjoy working with my colleague and friend Les because he is the steward here that we get all our information from.
Well, we appreciate Leslie's work and your work, and we'll see you next year with
Don't
good
you
news
think
as well.
If he's holding a couple of $1,000 for the Headwater Streams Committee,
We'll take up a collection.
There's a Latin term for that. It's called diminutus.
And as I say here, if we require any information on stagflation and anything like this, reporting, anything that we can provide, please don't hesitate to ask.
I just have to remember the early 80s to remember stagflation.
yeah.
100%. It's a bad thing.
Yeah,
It's not
good.
Thank you.
Thank you. I now know why President Trump has never released his marks from the Wharton Business School. He's never released them. Anyways, let's.
Did he actually go?
Did he really go?
Your
Good
mic is
question.
on. Ralph, your mic is on.
What? Your mic is
Your
on.
mic is on.
So moving along. Next item on the agenda is Better Homes Dufferin Home Energy Retrofit.
Unfinished business.
Oh, unfinished business. I'm skipping ahead. Okay, unfinished business list. Any questions, comments on that? Elaine?
We're doing our austerity measures here, keeping the heat down so that we're not spending extra money on propane or electricity. Yeah. So I did just want to bring back the question of having a special meeting to review the countryside stewardship report. We now all have that report, and I'm sure that you've all read it now that you've had it. And so I want to wonder when we could set a date for that. Obviously not until after May, the town hall, because, you know, that's coming up soon, but, or maybe before, so that we're prepared for the town hall. Anyway, I put that
Well,
before us.
I'm just wondering whether we can define the scope. That is a fairly large report that deals with a multiplicity of municipalities. Are we simply talking about the section of that report that pertains to Mono?
That would be my understanding, that we only want to talk about Mono. I'm
Okay.
selfish.
Well, I'm prepared to work with the clerk to find a date to convene a special meeting at some point. And are we looking at daytime, evening? Is there a preference?
Daytime, and at least half a day.
Well, let's I'm in the hands of council on that. I don't think it will take a half a day, but
I think if we need to give it the deliberation it deserves to bring out of that report anything that will form a guideline for how we make decisions and how we prioritize and et cetera, and what other bylaws we might need to bring into play that might take a higher priority than some of the ones we already have. Like, I think we need good conversation, and I think we need to give it some really good dialogue and thought and come out with something meaningful for us to use as a guiding light.
I read the report. I read the report when we first got it, re-looked at it again then when I remembered that we got it. And I just really don't understand how that, because the idea is that you bring this up with respect to our unfinished council business long list. And the idea that something in that report is going to help make it so that our priority is easier to define or is going to change it. Like, I'm not understanding what it is that we really want. Yeah.
Good question. So I read it, and I can tell you I have a sticky and a highlight on every page. And so those were things that stood out for me about what are important principles that we need to keep in mind when we review things, when things come forward on unfinished business, when citizens come forward with requests for changes to our bylaw, et cetera, changes to our zoning bylaws, changes to parkland fees and things like that. Like, there's a lot of connection. And I know we have our 3 E's, and that's great, but I think this will help us expand the 3 E's into more defining principles so that we can make decisions against something concrete that we've all decided is the direction that we're taking Mono in, or keeping, things where they are or whatever. So that's my thought, so.
Fred?
Yeah, I'm going to share Melinda's concern. I mean, we have a strategic plan that has a vision and goals in it, and my assumption is that's more or less what guides us. So maybe I'm being dense. I mean, I like that countryside report, but I don't know. Okay, we have a pending bylaw on unopened road allowances. If we read that countryside report, would we change that? Oh, you don't answer it now. I just want to say I'm not quite understanding what this one-day or half-day meeting would do.
Do you want me to bring back a report for council? We'll take some lessons from staff.
Can I make the following suggestion? I'll work with Fred to identify a date. I think it should be after our town halls so that we get the benefit of input from that process. And we could specify that it will be up to half a day, which is in my book defined as 9 to 12 with a sharp cutoff at 12, being prepared to adjourn early if we run out of things to talk about. I mean, there are some specific recommendations that are just simply not relevant anymore, and yet there are ones that are actually, in some respects, even more relevant than they were at the time. I mean, it's the interesting part of this study is that not only is it's both dated and timely. I mean, it's a combination of both things. I'm not certain it's going to take an entire morning to deal with it, but shall we approach it from that standpoint? Are we all right with that? and I think sometime in June or July. I reckon. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else on unfinished business?
Nope, ticking along.
Okay. Now I can jump ahead.
Yes.
To the Better Homes Dufferin Home Energy Retrofit, which I'm sure Fred will be happy to see is progressing by way of a model bylaw. Fred, would you like just to set this up?
So, Your Worship, it's pretty much laid out in the county report. The county has the funds, and they'll be leading this project. But technically, each municipality has to enter into a local improvement charges bylaw with each landowner that avails himself to this program. This is step one in that process, where the town of Mono basically confirms the rules that will be applied. That's what that document is. That's this bylaw is asking council to approve the rules as drafted by the county and their consultants.
Are there any questions about the documents that have been presented or the concept?
Well, the one minor thing I would add, because I raised this at the county, is I think we're going to need to promote this to get the residents, to suggest to them that they apply for these grants. And I thought we should put something on our website. However, the county thought, to make sure the message is uniform,
Should be the county.
that we should do this countywide. So
Yeah.
presumably they'll be sending us something at some point in the next 6 months, which we can put on our website.
Can I just a little thing that I think is kind of big. It's called a grant, and yet it's a loan. So it's a loan, and right? I mean,
I believe that the term grant refers to the funding to the county by FCM.
so then the county is loaning money for 25 years, up to 40,000 at a 2.5% interest rate, and I think that's key to the knowledge for our residents. It's a loan,
Secured against taxes.
so it's a lien.
Yeah. When is a loan not a lien, not a grant? Ralph?
Question for Les. This LIC is going to involve some work for you, and also for our solicitor, I understand. Is this going to cost us additional money, and do you have is your department okay with doing this without any additional resources?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Manktelow, anytime we involve our solicitor, there is a cost. But whatever is required of our department, I mean, we will come forward and get the job done.
Fred?
So,
And with respect to the solicitor, he's going to be involved on a sort of, he's going to group things together. Say we have 5 applications and deal with them all in groups like that to try and minimize cost.
I'm hoping that if the applicants come in from different municipalities, the cost will get allocated out. I'm hoping that the cost between the solicitor's cost of the applications come in from different municipalities, that cost will be allocated to that municipality.
Yes, sure.
Fred?
so if I can expand on that, first of all, the reference to solicitor is for legal purposes. That actually will be executed by staff. Specifically, the explanation is that it's being a bylaw, it's the clerk's department. So we won't actually be going to our solicitor. It's just referring to that the clerk's department will prepare these bylaws. And secondly, they can be grouped because the bylaw has to be signed within 1 year of executing the agreement. So that means that we can take most of all of the agreements done in a year and prepare the bylaws and bring them to council as a group. But there'll be no need to actually refer to our solicitor. So there'll be no cost. All administrative costs, though, are borne by the program.
And is it still the case that the county's not certain as to its allocation from the Federation?
Well, my understanding is that the figures are firm. If they're not, I'm not aware of that.
No, they're firm. The only fly
just
in the
don't know.
ointment is that the source of the money to the FCM is not, the federal government has not yet decided to announce the program, so we can't
No,
say
that's
where
it.
the money's coming from, other than it's FCM money.
Okay. Well, on that firm basis, I have a motion that we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw to authorize the Better Homes Dufferin Home Energy Retrofit Program as a local improvement, that it be signed by the mayor and clerk for the town of Mono, sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor Nick, seconded by Councillor Manktelow. Any further questions, discussion? Any opposed? And that motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is the new Tecumseth Library Agreement. I think it's fairly straightforward. Any comments, Fred?
No great surprises here, Your Worship. The library gave us a heads up last July that the rate would be going up this year. It didn't go up as much as what they were forecasting back in last July. They thought it would be going up to $53.88 per active user, so it's only going up to $52.82, so not quite that much. We have seen a slow increase in number of active users, though, over the last 5 or 6 years, so perhaps that's a good thing.
Thank you. I know it's a service that is appreciated by residents who live in the northeast quadrant of town of Mono. So I have if there's no further questions or comments, I have a motion that we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw authorizing the town of Mono to enter into a service fee collection agreement with the new Tecumseth Public Library Board for 2025, substantially in the form as attached as Schedule A to the bylaw, that it be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Do I have a mover on that? Councillor Capes, seconded by Councillor Davey. Any opposed? That motion is carried. Next item is the Shelburne Library cost sharing formula. And again, are there any questions or comments on that? So I have a motion that the Council of the Town of Mono recommends that we continue to use the existing Shelburne Library Board cost sharing formula. And I take it the only controversy there is that Amaranth may be trying to do something different?
Yeah, they were basically, this came as a surprise, so we didn't know before getting this letter from Amaranth. But it appears they just want confirmation that capital expenditures will be borne in the same manner as operating expenses.
So, did I read that motion? And do I have a mover and seconder? I don't, right. Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Davey. Any further discussion, comments? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Next item is a tender item having to do with road rehabilitation, 5th Side Road between Dufferin Road 17 and the first line. Matt, any setup on this?
Thanks, Mayor Croman. No, this road was part of the road management plan that council received last year, one of the 3 that was recommended to be done in 2025. Council approved it as part of the 2025 budget, and I'm pretty happy with the bid result. We have a $350,000 budget, and we are only doing the pulverizing of the existing asphalt, and placement of the base course asphalt will be coming back to council in the fall to put the top on next year. But the pricing is good. I would say we're about 10 to 15% less for base course asphalt from 2022, so there's a bit of a change there. So
A falling price?
a fall in the base course.
Grab it.
And we're going with it.
So it's effectively, it's under what we had budgeted for.
That's right. So there will be some culverts replaced and some drainage improvements as well. And yeah, the hope is to get this wrapped up, and then we could monitor the base over the winter and inspect again in the spring prior to putting the top course asphalt on, wearing surface.
Ralph?
But with respect to Mayor's comments, the budgeted price, which was $350,000, that also includes the second coat, the topping.
It does not. no.
It does not.
Just the base. So we're going to pulverize the existing asphalt layers with the underlying granular. We're going to grade that out. It'll strengthen that base material.
Right.
And then we're putting the base asphalt on, 60 millimeters of asphalt. And then next year, we'll be putting on 40 millimeters of HL3, the wearing surface.
But the budgeted price of our budget was $350,000.
That's right.
Does that include next year's
No.
addition?
No.
So we've come in 100 under budget.
Yeah, it'll be approximately, to put the top on, you're looking at probably another 150,000 by the time we put it out to tender next year.
Thanks very much, Mayor. So Matt, it's an interesting thing to split it out. On the one hand, when you pulverize and you put the asphalt on, and then people drive on it and it settles and everything's great. But what about, the whole weather situation? Like, is it also vulnerable? I drove on something yesterday where it was, and I forget. I went down to the city, so I forget where it was. But it was a clean asphalt. And it was like, oh, wow, this is a terrific road. And then all of a sudden there was a bunch of spots that were, ripped out from I know where it was on the Gore Road, which they've done a whole bunch of work on. And so my question is there a potential that weather, or that it's vulnerable with having only a thin layer of asphalt while you're waiting for a year to pass to put it on?
Thanks, Councillor Davey. No, it actually gives us the ability to monitor it and make sure, because it's the foundation, right? The base course is the foundation for the top course, the wearing surface. So, for example, in third line north of Deferred Road 7, Hockley Road, we left the base on. It's kind of a standard process that Public Works has always taken with building roads. We want to make sure we want to monitor it. We want to go back next year to see if there's any deflection in the pavement or any deficiencies, and then we put that onto that contractor before we put the top on. It is sealed. If anything, it's probably more susceptible leaving these roads with severe cracks and heaving in them. The more that they're left opened up, exposed to the weather, the cracks and the rutting, the worse it is for the material that's underneath the asphalt.
Just to follow up, so that's where my brain was going. The idea that if you pulverize it and you leave it and you pat it all down and you leave it open so that any weather and whatever can go through it, then it really is packing down to put all the asphalt on. But when you put it on one piece, then you're calling it a road, so that if there is a problem that you're going to fix and add on to it, you would have to, remove the new asphalt that you put on and fix wherever it dipped down or?
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so if you had pulverized it and left it, you would be, without putting the base asphalt on, which is what this project is, we'll be putting 60 millimeters. It's a substantial layer of base asphalt, so just over 2 inches, and then we put the 40 millimeters on next year. But we're, like I said, we'll monitor it. We'll have the geotechnical engineers on site during the placement of it. Prior to placing any asphalt, we make sure that we deal with any susceptible areas. Like, I would say that this road has deteriorated quite a bit in the last 5 years, more so than what we had expected. So the rutting and stuff like that, we'll have a look at once it's pulverized, and if they say we got to dig some spots out, we would dig it out and deal with it and address it then, and then we crown it all up and get it crowned to the slope that we need prior to placing the top or the base asphalt. And then again, it's going to see traffic throughout the remainder of the summer, the fall and the winter. And then we go out there in the spring once half loads are off, and we kind of have a look at it, see if there's any deficiencies, segregation in the asphalt, or any rutting or any type of compaction issues. We'll have that looked at. And once the geotechnical engineer says, yeah, we're all good, that's hired through the town, paid for by the contractor. Once they're all happy, then we proceed with the top lift.
Thank you very much.
I just have one question. Is this section of road being used as an unofficial truck route bypass?
I don't see that a lot. I see them, the pit is exiting at the intersection at Deferred Road 7 and 5 Side Road. In the past, there was some use at, off of here, Ontario, and they would head west onto Hockley, but we haven't been seeing too much of that in our traffic counting. The data that we've been collecting haven't seen a significant increase.
I just
as indicated in my report, the road does see 1,850 cars on average a day, which is fairly high for mono roads. Like between the town line, which was also recommended to be done this year, which we weren't able to tackle it. It sees the highest. 5 Side Road acts as a bit of a unofficial bypass for people not wanting to go through Orangeville that are heading southeast. So they'll cut across 5 Side Road or Hockley Road.
I just wondered if it was experiencing more wear and tear because of the truck traffic. Fred?
I would guess, and I'm just guessing though, that one of the reasons for the high volume of traffic is because of the Ag Center and the Event Center and all the traffic going up there. And it's interesting because with all that traffic, the pavement has worn out faster than we anticipated, and yet they pay a very low tax rate. I think it's
0.
Yeah, so they create all this traffic, they wear our pavement out, and they don't pay us any taxes.
Sorry. My inner voice. Okay, I have a motion that the Council for the Town of Mono accepts the total bid price of $249,221.67, inclusive of HST, from Cox Construction Limited of Guelph, Ontario, to rehabilitate the 5th Side Road between Dufferin Road 7, Hockley Road, to the first line EHS. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Davey moves, seconded by Deputy Mayor Nix. Any further discussion, comments? And I see no opposition. The motion passes. Next item is the court passes item prepared by Kim. Kim?
Good morning, Council. Yeah, this is a report to Council. It's that time of year when our tennis courts and our pickleball courts are about to open back up again. We have players that are very eager to get out there. And so at this time, looking at Council for direction as far as court passes, we normally have charged $30 for a court pass, which gives individuals access to use any of the courts that we have in Mono during the public hours, which the public hours are those hours when the courts are not in use by the pickleball club or the Mono Tennis Club. The public hours are also from 7:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. at Lynn Gibson Park, so full use of those tennis courts for the public, not shared with either of our clubs. And just wondering at this point, the $30 court pass, to continue with charging that, as it does gives us funds towards the maintenance of the courts. I know people think that there's not a lot of maintenance. You basically open the courts and close them. However, there is the resurfacing of the courts that has to be thought about, which we do approximately every 12 years. There's also new nets. There's the wind protectors that we put around our courts. There's fences, and there's grass cutting. There's all kinds of things that go into the maintenance of the courts. So charging a court pass is not only just a means to being able to get some funds towards that, but it's also when people are given a court pass, it's almost like they have a membership through the town of Mono to use those courts. And it's felt that they take a little more kind of the watchdog look at the courts, and they like to make sure that, you know, that we don't have activities on those courts which are not sanctioned by the incredible, fabulous surface that we've put down for people to enjoy.
Elaine?
Thank you, Kim. That's fabulous. Maybe I missed it in the report. Did we do a check in the surrounding area about the fees that they charge for passes or for use of their courts?
It's different in different municipalities. The town of Orangeville does charge for use of their public courts. It's a $50 court pass. Other municipalities, inclusive of Orangeville, this is another way they charge as well, but for their indoor courts, municipalities charge on a per-hour basis. So if you want to rent a court, you would pay approximately anywhere from $12 to $30 per hour to rent a court. You would do that through a booking system.
And I'm just wondering, is $30 the price, or should we be charging more? Like, because as Kim said, there's a lot of maintenance that has to happen, and people need to, you know, a membership would cost you a lot more than that. So I don't know. I'm just asking because I wanted to know surrounding prices for passes, and are we reasonable, or could we charge a little more?
Melinda, then Ralph.
Thanks for that question. Thanks very much for this report, Kim. This is really interesting, and it's so exciting that we have now data to be able to see that it was 245 people from Mono, and of the 477. So that means if we do increase for our non-residents, which I think is reasonable, to $50, that then competes with the fee that Orangeville, so that it's the same, but we're not gouging them or whatever, which they're accused of for us or whatever, right? Like it's on the social media. I think we'll see our revenue increase. So I think that we should stick with the $30 since we always have. But it does kind of beg the, you know, we weren't able to put lights somewhere, so there are bigger costs coming in addition to having, you know, everything's all spanky new now, but, you know, 12 years will go by in a flash, and so it is something I think that needs to be looked at annually. But I'm happy with keeping it just because we really have made a big change in the last year. So the big question for me, though, was, you know, the clubs that we have a fee to them, and it's a different portion of the population that is in there, and so we have to also be keeping our prices lower or whatever. Did you have any complaints from any of these people? Because I know there was a lot of positive, but did you have any comments about that, you know, the hours for the public is little? I know we got the Lynn Gibson as a separate, but the hours, and how come I can't get in on, and is there going to be a tussle there?
Going back to last year, yes, there were challenges brought forth by the public that they felt that they weren't given enough time. It's approximately, at the pickleball courts, about a 50-50 split. The tennis courts at Mono Center, when I took a closer in-depth look at that, it is definitely in the favor of the tennis club as to the time allotted. But in counterbalance to that, the Island Lake or the Lynn Gibson courts are 100% open to the public. So there is, yeah, definitely we've had some challenges, mostly in regards to the pickleball courts.
Okay, to the pickleball, I was interested about that. So I think, you know, the more seasons that we have a little bit of data on how it's getting used and everything is going to be very helpful going forward, because we were, you know, asked by the clubs about things, right? So this is great. Thank you, Kim.
Ralph?
The charge of $30, it seems to me to be pretty timid in this day and age, and vis-a-vis your indoor charge per hour is reflective. There's no sport that I know of that I can get on a court for $30 throughout a whole season. I'd be quite happy with raising the price. I do recognize that there's a disadvantage in that the prime times are being used by the clubs, but we have Lynn Gibson, which is wide open. And so there's 2 points. I definitely would support an increase in fees for Mono residents and a further increase in fees for non-Mono residents. There was some talk by the tennis club that we're trying to decrease or remove the opportunity for individual residents. Where's that conversation gone?
At this time with the tennis club, we do have a agreement, a shared agreement for the public to be able to access those courts approximately 30% of the open hours.
Mhm.
And
Are they still fussed about that?
at this time, I've not heard any disregard to that. no.
Okay. The other issue that we had in the back of our mind when all of us were around here and the development of the new courts at Lynn Gibson was the possibility that they might develop a program to manage those courts similar to what the tennis club has done. And I'm wondering if there's been any movement from the community or elsewhere that going in the direction of forming a new club for the Lynn Gibson site.
I've not heard anything from any resident or prospects in that regard.
Would it be appropriate for you to encourage that?
That, I think, is something that we would need to go into further discussion as to whether or not we want to go into a club arrangement with those courts.
Perhaps just having a few years under our belt would be a good idea and see what happens. So my point is, as contrasted to my fellow councillor here, is that we could easily charge them more than $30 for 30-odd trips to the tennis court.
If I may say just one more thing, when you asked me about other municipalities, yes, there, as I said, there are municipalities that definitely charge more than the $30, but there's also municipalities such as Shelburne and Mulmer, for instance. Mulmer's just put in one new court, or they have one court, and that is 100% open to the public. There are no fees to use those courts. So now, I will say there's no clubs associated with any of those courts either. And their courts are fewer in number than what we offer. However, at this time, residents are permitted to go and use those courts without a cost.
Fred and Elaine.
Kimberly, I got an email last week from somebody, I think the person lives on the first line. I couldn't tell from the address where this person lives, but they were complaining about parking. Now, going on memory, I know we left on the east side of first line. Where's Matt? Yeah, we left an open space for parking on that side. But I'm just wondering, for the Lynn Gibson court, do you know if we're getting enough people using that court that we are creating a parking problem on the first line?
I will say that the courts are not open yet, so I'm sure that I saw the complaint as well, or the concern, and I'm assuming that's because it was one of the first nice days that we had. We have 6 to 8 parking spots at the Lynn Gibson Park. So at this time, without there being pickleball lines on those courts, I really am not foreseeing a parking challenge caused by the tennis courts.
Okay, but if I could just, another one, Matt, how many, we did leave an open space on the east side of the first line for parking. How many cars can park there, do we know? Ballpark.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Nix. I can't think off the top of my head what it was. I want to say there's at least 8.
8 plus 8, we could accommodate something like 16 or 17 cars before we got into a problem. With our parking lot?
With the parking lot plus the
east side of the
roadside.
first line.
Yeah, Mike, do you remember? It's just south of Blue Heron. There's a hydrant there. So then there's, I want to say it's 8, but that's just going off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Elaine?
And there would never be that many people parking there to play tennis on those courts, because you can't play that many people on the court at the same time, as far as I know, unless you're playing a different game. I do know that people actually pay the $50 to play on the Orangeville courts. And so if they're willing to pay $50 there, and they're Mono residents, then I think we should reevaluate the $30. Just a last call for that.
Can I just refute that for a second? The idea, we have to remember that when we had our big budget talk and everything, and the world the way it is going now with the cost of everything going up, and that this has been a opportunity for us, I mean, because we've always had the $30, but it was more advertised and easier to access by doing it online and so on, that has made this large bulge in the number of people who have stepped up and shown interest. And so I have no problem ever with user fees and them being reasonable and so on, but I would favor going with our recreation director's advice, recommendation for this year to keep it and to increase the non-residents. So that already is an increase, because that's the majority of the people are from outside of Mono who are coming. So they already are. But to give our own residents an outlet that is a nominal fee and see how it goes for a season. Just because of the times that we're in now, we're headed into summer. We don't want to discourage people from recreating when money's tight, and it's just going to get tighter. We just heard about that.
So if I can just return to the issue of parking, Matt, I take it that the signs are up?
They're up. That's
Okay,
correct. Yeah.
they're up, because at one point they hadn't been put up.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were up at the last round of amendments
And
to
Fred,
the
can I
bylaw.
confirm that we do patrol that area occasionally and hand out tickets?
We do patrol occasionally. We have not had opportunity to hand out tickets because there hasn't been any illegal parking. Parking patrol started this weekend.
Okay.
Summer patrol started. We've historically started on the Easter long weekend.
So that addresses the concern of the resident who was worried that there was going to be parking on the west side. The question for Kim, I'm shocked that Orangeville doesn't differentiate between its own residents and others for tennis when they do for, I think, everything else.
Absolutely.
Not that I'm giving them any ideas here, but
Can I just make one more,
Yeah.
just to make sure council is clear? Our $30 per resident or $30 court pass is per resident. So if you have a husband and wife who want to play, it's $30 per person. It's not per household. It's per person.
Yeah.
Okay.
okay. Well, I think that, yeah. So I do have a motion which I can read, and if there's no further questions, that the 2025 annual court pass shall be set at $30 for Mono residents and $50 for non-residents. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Capes moves, seconded by Deputy Mayor Nix. Any further questions or comments or friendly amendments? Fred?
No, just before we go on a break, you're going in camera at 10:30, and I'm declaring an indirect conflict of interest. I've filed the paperwork with the clerk, and since we're about at the end of the main part of the meeting, I think I will leave the meeting at this point.
Okay.
Actually, Your Worship?
Yes.
In camera is scheduled for 11 a.m.
It's
Said
11?
10.
Says
Says
10:30.
10:30.
It does. Mine says 11.
Mine said 10:30.
You've got an updated one.
Not sure
I
how
was
that
surprised
happened.
by the 10:30.
Well, I'll
I just downloaded a copy.
stay another half hour.
So it's
Do-
not till 11?
Do we want to break after this motion? No, we haven't.
No, let's
No.
vote on that then.
There's one
Let's
more
carry
item on this.
And there's one more item that I'd like to address before we take a break. Okay, if there's no further questions or amendments to that motion, any opposed to the motion? The motion is carried.
Thank you, Kim.
And that brings us to Ralph's motion, which I'll read, and then he can move it and speak to it.
Can I comment on it first?
Okay, go ahead.
And I do have a prop, if you don't mind. I'll bring the
No,
prop in.
that's fine. Props are allowed.
I'll use the mic. Rather than mark the wall, I'll ask the mayor if he'd hold the prop for me.
Yes,
Thank you.
there we go.
And
You want this mic? Oh,
I'm okay. No, I'm just going to. Thanks for it. Just by way of, pardon? Just by way of introduction, as most of you know, I'm not usually making a lot of noise and flag waving, etc. But I want you to know that I'm changing. And I've actually been flying the Ukrainian flag for the last 3 years at my driveway entrance, and I fly this in recognition of Ukraine's resistance to Putin and his unbelievable attempt to conquer Ukraine, and to show my anger at the Russian invasion. Now, the Canadian flag is our national flag and the national symbol of Canada. It was adopted in 1965 when Lester B. Pearson was the Prime Minister. I have to mention this because for some Canadians, there may be a problem with flying the maple leaf, because recently it became the emotional property of the truckers' convoy and the anti-Pax right. And that may be disturbing to some people. Clearly, it's time for us, though, to take it back and for it to once again represent fully a clear showing of our patriotism. Remind you that Canada has many fundamental strengths, many of which differentiate us from our neighbor to the south. These fundamentals include multiculturalism, responsibility, inclusivity, fairness, and empathy, and globalism. And each of these tenets is a threat to Donald Trump and his psychopathic goal of world domination. The truth is that we must celebrate Canada in ways that can be seen and be counted, or we risk losing it. These are some of the thoughts which underlie this motion, and it's a motion to show our patriotism by flying the Canadian flag. A couple of points. The Canadian flag protocol is that the flag should not be flown below any other national flag, and if you're flying it with two flags, it should be seen on the left, which you'll notice will be on my front entranceway. I also want to thank Elaine Kehoe for stimulating this proposal and for suggesting that our council supports flying the Canadian flag at our residences and our business. May I read the motion?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Whereas Canada's flag is a symbol of Canadian identity and reflects our shared values of democracy, inclusion, and justice, and whereas our flag is truly symbolic of Canada and the pride that we have in being Canadian, and whereas most Canadians are not known for their flag waving but are more quietly patriotic, and whereas in the wake of the freedom movement, some Canadians may be uncomfortable with waving the flag, and whereas we fly the flag very proudly as a statement of our values and our Canadian sovereignty, and whereas flying the flag represents gratitude to all those who have sacrificed for Canada, and whereas President Trump, ignoring the long-time bond of friendship and allyship between our two countries, imposed destructive tariffs and unbelievably suggests making Canada the 51st state, and whereas we will never, ever be the 51st state. And whereas on February the 11th, 2025, the town of Mono, in opposition to unacceptable U.S. tariffs, passed a motion to review its procurement practices with the goal of maximizing economic benefit to Canada. Therefore, be it resolved that the town of Mono encourages Mono residents to demonstrate their patriotism by flying the Canadian flag at their homes and businesses. And thank you.
Moved by yourself and seconded by Elaine.
Thank you. And to further support this, anybody in the room who would care to take up the Canadian flag, there are two flags up here. There's a 27 by 54 inch one, medium size, and there's a smaller 18 by 36 one. And if there's a need for it, there's a list there. You can put your name down if we run out of flags.
Elaine.
Thank you, Councillor Manktelow. When you talk about flying the flag as a statement of our values, of our Canadian sovereignty and other things and the qualities, I would encourage people to look at the new Canadian passport, which has wiped out our entire history and cultural reference. I have a letter to the MP if you want to read it. And so there you go. But people know if they want to fly a Canadian flag, just as they do on Canada Day. When you drive around, you see them everywhere. People are doing this of their own free will. Now, we're being specific to flags and not signs. Let's make sure that's clear. And so I would wonder if we could make a friendly amendment, because you yourself used this word in your introduction, that therefore be it resolved that the town of Mono supports Mono residents who choose to demonstrate their patriotism by flying the Canadian flag at their homes and businesses. I don't think it sounds a little bit more dictatorial the other way, and I don't want to mirror anybody in some dictatorial other country. So I just wonder if we could soften that by saying that we support it for those who choose to fly it.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with that.
Thank you.
The current, the motion that Ralph put forward just uses the word encourages. I don't see how, okay, I don't care.
Well, encourages, in my way of looking at the language, means that we're asking you to do it. I don't look at it that way. Support means that if you choose to fly the flag, we support that. I don't know.
No, I think it's a friendly amendment that's been
The mover
accepted
accepted
by
it,
the
and thank
mover
you.
and
Thank you.
seconder, so we will support. Any further discussion? Fred?
Your worship, can I just get confirmation? It was just to replace encourages with supports, or was it to also add after residents who choose?
Choose to.
So it would be, therefore be it resolved that the town of Mono supports Mono residents who choose to demonstrate their patriotism by flying the Canadian flag at their homes and businesses.
Fred?
And could I just point out that I know the convoys used the Canadian flag, which really disappointed me in a sense that some people do feel awkward because it seems to align them with those people. My father served for 5 years active service in the Canadian Army during the Second World War, and he wore a maple leaf lapel on his uniform. And for some of you who may remember when Pearson gave his famous speech in Winnipeg when we adopted the flag, and there was boos coming from the crowd, from the Legion, and he shut them up by pointing out that on their uniforms during the Second World War, they all had the maple leaf on their, I think it was on their shoulder. I remember that speech very well, 65.
Well, I participated in the Canada-wide contest to design the flag as a kid. Yeah. I submitted a design. I think I still have a copy of it somewhere, and it looks nothing like this. I think it had some blue in it.
I was well out of public school by then.
Anyways, any further comments on the motion? Any opposition to the motion? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, Ralph, for that initiative. And let's have shall we have a 10-minute break?
So
Oh,
I should stay around.
Yeah.
We're not going.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. 10 minutes.
We're back live.
Thank you, everyone.
Where's Elaine?
know.
Oh, well, she'll get it, I guess.
Yeah.
She must have just gone to the washroom. She must have
So was there anything in particular on Schedule A that you wanted to talk to Fred before departing?
Well, just item 3, you've read that report. I think it's good news for the 3 municipalities I represent on the board of the Credit Valley Conservation, that we don't have any risk management issues up here that are remaining. You know, we've been implementing the Clean Water Act now for a decade. And it's been a long haul, I gotta tell you. But in terms of the 3 municipalities I represent, East Halifax, Amaranth, and Mono, we're clean. I mean, we're in good shape in terms of risks.
Anything else on Schedule A?
Not for me.
Okay.
I was supposed to have read about arsenic, and I haven't. Eileen's gonna ask questions on arsenic.
Elaine? Schedule A?
Yes, I have the arsenic and all of the other ones related to strong mare powers that I would like to say something about.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the whole arsenic issue, and I'm just verifying that when we do the big study, that will be included and it will work towards the standards that are in this new water, where is it? Number 7. So it will look at things related to the Health Canada guidelines for drinking water, obviously. So that level being 0.005 milligrams per liter when we do that big study, right? Yes?
So
Awesome.
Matt, go ahead. Oh, Mike.
Well, it's a work.
Definitely, Matt. So I think I'll bring council up to speed as to where you are, because we've done the study. If council recalls, 2 or 3 years ago, I released a report from the Walkerton Clean Water. We've come up with what we believe would be our potential, one of the potential remediations of arsenic in the water. This is, well, very good to the health and quality of the drinking water for the consumers of Ontario. Our expectation is Ontario will follow suit. Normally, the Health Canada does their study, usually following out of something out of the EPA, the states. Health Canada follows suits, and shortly after, Ontario will fall in line. We went from 25 to 10, and Town of Mono was at 7 in the bulk of our wells, with a few spikes, which was above half. We have to do, we were told by the province at that time, you got to start looking at this because you're running above 5 milligrams per liter. Sorry, 5 micrograms per liter. We're in the early process right now of the EA. Council needs to recall that we have 5 wells that contain arsenic. The entire Island Lake drinking water system. Getting from 7 to 5 was going to take a lot of research inside of the environmental assessment that we're just entering into. Getting from 5 to 2.5 creates a lot of excess arsenic, creates a whole bunch of different issues for us, and we'll add costs to the project. Just last week, I submitted, with Matt and I worked towards submitting an extension request to the province with respect to our grant. This has changed our whole scope of project. I don't see this not being implemented. It's health, right? So we've asked for an extension to the grant, which was late 2020, or sorry, early 2027 was the expenditure. Our expectations are 2028, 2029. We've received a schedule of the EA process from the town engineer, which will be occurring over the next year and a half, which will include public consultation and everything. But we're getting to where we need to strip 100% of the arsenic out of the water now. We're not looking at a half 5 micrograms now. The town needs to look at 0, or find new wells, or join the systems with Cardinal Woods, or look at our adjoining municipalities for source. So it's going to take a lot of detail and time on Matt's behalf and the town engineer to get to a solution, and council will be involved with that, as well as the public, through the environmental assessment that we're going to start on. So,
Thank you very much.
Could I add something to that? The only thing that concerns me, and I was a bit behind the 8 ball on this one, Mike, but yes, I know our Island Lake wells have arsenic in them, and so what are the solutions? You say we could join them to Cardinal Woods, or maybe our adjoining municipalities. If you look at item 3 in Schedule A, at least 5 of the 10 wells in Orangeville have an increasing problem with either sodium or chloride, and so do our Cardinal Woods wells. So we may solve one problem, arsenic, by submitting our Island Lake people to another problem, which is too much sodium or chloride.
Which may be worse.
I'm just saying, you know, maybe up here we have problems with getting adequate, good drinking water that doesn't have a problem. And if you want me to go on this, and I won't, when I look at the new population targets for Dufferin County, and I know where they're going to put most of those people, it occurs to me, why would we put more people in a place where we're having trouble finding good, clean drinking water? I just.
So I don't think the Mono is subject to those growth numbers,
No.
right?
Orangeville is.
Right, so we're separated drinking water. I think the removal of salt is a possibility, with the byproduct of that being a lot better than what the byproduct is of removing arsenic.
Okay.
We end up with pure arsenic when we remove it. One of the challenges of the EA is obviously going to look at what do we do with it? We're just a vicious circle. We take it out of the ground, take it out of the water, and put it back into the ground. So it's a vicious circle, right? But yeah, these are joining with the Cardinal Woods system is not a direct solution, because that's the aquifer that's under the Tier 3 quantity threat. Well, we're not there yet, but there is concern. So this is council will be involved in this over the next couple of years for sure. It's going to create some significant questions, some hypotheses, some theories, and I think Deputy Mayor Nix, that growth component of it is going to be at the forefront.
Okay. We have 3 minutes before we need to go in camera. Melinda?
Thank you, Mayor. So this is very interesting, that this is talking about, you know, our municipal responsibility to provide in our water for our residents. But we have a whole lot of our population which has their own wells. And when you take your little water sample to the public health, we're looking at, you know, the E. coli and so on. And so when you get these broad brush stroke of that we have to have 0 in our water, what's for the rest of it? Do we foresee that we'll be able to get any information that will be applicable to our individual well owners?
So individual owners can do the same level of inspection that the municipality does with respect to the, it's probably $800 now, I would say, and it's around $800. You can do that investigative detail that we submit to council in the annual and the summary. Matt, does RO strip arsenic? RO takes everything, you know, it'd be recommended if you're in an area of concern. And the participants the businesses that participated in the, over the last couple of years with respect to our arsenics near the Coles and Island Lake, they've been provided with the information that would be, they could make a reasonable decision with respect to the information that we provided them. But RO systems in areas like this would be recommended for sure. But the more this comes to light and the more we go through the EA, I think everybody's going to be smarter about this to protect themselves.
Thank you. Seeing that it's 1 minute to 11.
I saw Jeff pop on screen there.
We're going to go in camera. My apologies. But we will come back and pick up where we left off on Schedule A. So I have a motion that council move into a closed meeting pursuant to Section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended at 11 a.m. For Bruce Trail Conservancy OLT appeal, Section 239, subsection 2, subsection E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. Do I have a mover? Councillor Capes moves, seconded by Councillor Davey. Any opposed? That motion is carried. If we can now go in camera. Done by noon.
We're
Okay.
back live.
Thank you. So I have a motion that we rise from an in-camera session at 11:41 a.m. and that council accept the advice from the town solicitor and direct town staff and the town solicitor to proceed accordingly. And who would like to move? Councillor Capes and Deputy Mayor. I'm so used to recognizing Fred. Councillor Manktelow seconds. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Back to Schedule A. Elaine, you had some items under strong mayor powers.
Yes, I do, thank you. So yes, with all of the items on Schedule A related to strong mayor powers, number 6, 11, and 12, it's another example of dictatorship of the province to the municipalities, which I believe shows a level of utter disrespect for the municipal process that has been in place since the Act was born. I think it shows an utter disrespect for the knowledge, experience, etc. of municipal staff at all levels. Assuming it assumes that mayors have the skill, knowledge, and expertise, I think is a mistake. It undermines the whole professional value of our municipal staff and the whole municipal excellence that we uphold. And I would dare go so far as to say, I suspect this opens the door for corruption. That's what I have to say about all of those motions. I support the ones who do not want strong mayor powers, and I support the fact that we brought forward a motion here at this council
passed
to
it.
not support
Yeah,
strong mayor powers. Thank you.
go ahead.
So I was aghast when they brought this in, and I think it applied to Ottawa and Toronto, and now it's being more generalized. I agree with what your Councillor Capes has said. This really undermines the democratic process. It means that the role of municipal councillor and staff is not as important as it was. Frankly, I would never run for council if this was the situation, because I want my vote to count. And this is a motion which would minimizes it. So I would be very supportive of us doing a motion indicating that we do not approve the strong mayor powers, and very much as the two, 11 and 12, I guess it is, some motion to that effect that we do not approve it, and that furthermore that we send it to all municipalities.
We've already done that. Yeah.
Have we?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
We could do it again.
Well, like, that's where I was wondering about it, that we've already done it, we've already made it, and it's all very well, even for our own mayor, to have publicly and on Facebook and so on, to have said, that this isn't acceptable or whatever, but that doesn't mean that we don't actually, in the next round of them, get the powers given to us, because our neighbors now will have it, right? Their surrounding municipalities, Shelburne and Orangeville have it now, under this new, when they added the next, whatever it was, 169 of the 444, right? So I don't know whether it's of value or to keep adding to it. But I'm equally troubled.
send this out as a confirmation of our previous motion. I mean, noise makes a difference. That's what it's all about here.
Can I suggest that I have a run at writing a new motion, because there are some interesting wrinkles, and we'll bring it back to the next council meeting. One of the interesting wrinkles is that the strong mayor powers only apply to municipalities with 6 or more members of council, because the math doesn't work with 5. Right. Okay? So there isn't a single municipality in Ontario that is trusted with strong mayor powers where there's a 5-person council. The other thing is, I mean, that may be the government saying, well, we're perfectly content to see bloated-sized councils. I don't know. I had a long conversation with the president of AMO, who I wrote to when the government's press release came out, because unfortunately she had succumbed to the temptation to allow her name and a quotation to be attached to the government's press release. And I think I was fairly respectful, and I said, this is really a bad practice, because we know how split the opinion is on this, and I dare say the majority of municipalities do not support strong mayor powers. But what's worse is that by doing this, as our president, you are giving the government, cover for this kind of thing. I don't care whether the mayor of Windsor signs on or not, but I do mind if the president of AMO does. She actually phoned me, and we talked for almost an hour. I think I made some progress on that issue, but we talked about a whole bunch of other stuff. And she was the one who actually made the point that if you're a 5-member council, you're out of luck.
But the fact remains that she supports it, and that's a problem.
I'm not certain. She said something like it's, and I won't say where she got the wording, but she used the old expression, it's a tool in the toolbox, okay? It's not that she supports it so much as it's a tool in the toolbox, which is weasel words.
A slippery slope, though, is the other point, right?
And the numbers can change to fit it. It's 6 now, it could be anybody.
Yeah, well, they could find a way of making it 5 if they wanted to, but I will bring something back for council's consideration next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Ralph, anything on Schedule
No.
A? Melinda?
Well, I had those ones.
Okay. And
One thing I should mention, and just bring it to the front, is that it's the item 4, which is an announcement that Jennifer Vincent is the new CAO of an NVCA, and we're very pleased to have her, and I'm looking forward to this being an appointment which helps to renew that organization.
Okay. And I have nothing that hasn't been already raised. Reports of staff and council. Sorry?
Can we get a mover and seconder to adopt the Schedule A, please? Your Worship?
Absolutely. Elaine Capes moves the motion to accept Schedule A. Ralph Manktelow seconds it. Any opposed? And that motion is carried. Thank you. Reports. Les, anything to report? Okay. Matt, anything to report?
Nothing major other than street sweeping started in the south end today in subdivisions, and Public Works has been in constant contact with our counterparts, lower tiers in the county, with respect to half loads, and they unfortunately need to remain on for another week or so. So monitor the website for that, but we're holding tight on that because we're still having some frost coming out.
I hope we're not holding to that because somebody else is holding to it. Somebody else, if we're in a position to lift, I think
the challenge becomes like respect the courtesy we extend to our neighbors, right? So if we have vehicles on our road, it becomes harder to enforce.
Okay.
So we got trucks going on a certain road in one municipality, and then hit the neighboring municipality, and they're still having trouble.
Fair enough.
So
Fair
to the
enough.
west, it's a little bit of a challenge.
Okay.
I was walking roads on Sunday in New Tecumseth, and they were cracking. The gravels were cracking, so there's some even in Malmer, like on my way home, I watching roads, and there's some significant heaving still going on. Surprisingly, but this week is warm, and we're supposed to get a good rain tomorrow, I believe.
Good.
So I don't anticipate it being much longer.
This has a bearing on the Rogers installation.
A little bit. I've noticed them still working pretty significantly. They got mini excavators working on the south end right now.
Oh, they found a workaround. Okay.
Yeah, they've been working with the mini excavators, and they have the drilling rig, which falls under the axle loading.
load.
So they've been working away. We've
Okay,
been seeing
good.
them. We haven't received any recent applications, but
Okay.
they are working away.
Kim?
Just a couple of things. One is an update on Make Mono Shine, which is it's just about to go into its second week. We started April 15th, but that was a short week, so we've had 3 days. At this point, we've had 12 tags picked up by 4 different families, so really hoping that this following week there'll be an incredible upsurge of people coming to the office to take us up on our offer to give them free garbage tags and bags and gloves so that they can go out and pick up the garbage that they see lying around after this winter, particularly on our trails and our parks and in front of their homes.
And
So
just for the record, the actual day of?
between the
It's
15th and
it's now,
29th.
It's between those dates, okay.
Correct. And today, April 22nd, is Earth Day.
Okay,
Just
excellent.
letting
Thank
you
you.
know that. So that, putting the big shout out to the public, please come to the office and pick up your tags. We're eagerly awaiting you to be here. And just the next thing is to let council know I've got a couple of RFPs that are about to be released. One is for the resurfacing of the 2 older tennis courts at Mono Tennis Club. That is a project that we've had council agree to in the budget. It will be shared 50% in cost by the Mono Tennis Club. So that RFP will be released before the end of the week. And another RFP, which I'm bringing to your attention, is because we have had some calls regarding the playground at Lynn Gibson Park and some of the parts on the playground that are not working any longer, which we are very aware of, and hence the reason why the RFP for that playground is also going to be released by the end of next week.
Okay, thank you. Fred?
I have nothing, Your Worship.
Thank you. Mike?
Just a couple things, if shout out to the public and to council, anybody who ordered trees, that those seedling pickups are coming in the next couple weekends. I had a meeting last week with Climate Ready Infrastructure Service that came from Councillor Capes through what I believe is the Tamarack section. So anyway, it's an Infrastructure Canada funded company where they will look at your they didn't really align with us per se, because they at the status we are right now, they didn't align with us. But I think after we had some good conversations, I might have been able to convince them that doing a climate resiliency review, no charge to the town, of our, and I haven't talked to Matt about this yet, but of our road management plan, our bridge inspection reports, and look at our existing reports and assess them for climate resiliency. So it's in the early stages, and they might be looking at some energy management issues with respect to climate as well. So so hopefully that I've convinced them that would be the best way to serve or help the town of Mono.
That's very positive.
What was the full name of that organization?
Climate Ready Infrastructure. Don't take me, Ralph, if that changes, I'll email you.
Thank you. Anything else, Mike? Okay.
No, that's it, thank you.
Melinda, anything?
No, I don't have any reports.
Ralph? No. That was easy. Notices of motion. Any notices of motion? Okay.
Does your notice of motion count that you already told us about?
Since I've already mentioned it, I'll simply submit it to Fred. I have a motion that we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of Council of the Town of Mono in Session 8, 2025, held on the 22nd of April, 2025, that it be signed by the Mayor and Clerk, sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Manktelow moves, seconded by Councillor Davy. Okay, I was confused
I'm not
there. Okay,
Well, I am, but.
yeah. Any opposition to that motion? And that motion is carried. And true to my promise, I have a motion that we adjourn this meeting at 11:56 a.m. Councillor Capes moves, seconded by Councillor Davy. Any opposition? And that motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.